Hey, welcome to Movie Friends. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Seth.
Today we're looking at the world of movies from a different angle, the film festival. Picture this. You've made a movie. Wow, you did it! It was hard, but it was worth it. Now the cameras have stopped rolling, the actors are gone, and the editing is finished. What comes next?
Well, now it's time for people to see your movie. If you're lucky, and if your movie is good enough, you might even be able to get it into a film festival. Thankfully for filmmakers and movie lovers, there are many film festivals around the world. And today we're focusing on the team behind the Stony Brook Film Festival. They are celebrating 30 years of their festival this year, and we wanted to highlight their experience in running it.
First up, you'll hear our interview with Kent Marks and Paul Newland. For the most part, when we ask a question, you'll hear Kent answer first, then Paul. Also, small note, these guys work at a university, and so you can actually hear some faint music that was playing in a dorm near them. Rather than ruin some kid's day, we just let it fly. It's authentic.
Kent and Paul have been with the festival and Stony Brook University for years. They wear many hats, and we love talking with them about how they got into movies and what it's like to pour through hundreds of submissions every single year.
After that, you'll hear our interview with Alan Inkles. He founded the festival and has been working at it ever since. Through COVID, through finding their audience, learning to run a projector, and learning how not to run Q&As, Alan has seen it all.
30 years is a long time to do anything, and as movie lovers, we feel that we need to celebrate our institutions, especially ones that go out of their way to highlight the voices that the Stony Brook Film Festival does. If you're in the New York region, we really recommend you check out the Stony Brook Film Festival. This year's festival takes place July 17th through the 26th. And hey, we're partnering with the Stony Brook Film Festival this year.
To save 25% off your pass, use code MovieFriends at checkout.
Also, be sure to check the show notes to this episode. They're giving away 4 free passes to the festival if you follow the link and fill it out.
Here is our interview with Paul Newland and Kent Marks. We hope you enjoy it.
So, Paul, you are the outreach director.
Yes.
And Kent, you are the film festival coordinator and contracts administrator.
Correct.
Wowee, two jobs. Holy cow.
We all have quite a few jobs here.
Yeah.
Multiple hats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So how many years have you been a part of the Stony Brook Film Festival?
The first year I was at the festival was 2012. I actually started in the fall of 2011, literally weeks after that festival ended. So I was here working at the Stoller Center for a year. Did a little bit of work for the festival, not a lot of work that year. We were still sorting out what my responsibilities were. But during the 2012 festival is when I started interacting with some of the filmmakers, helping out. And that's the year that actually Paul and I were watching a Q&A during that year. We were watching Don Swayze, Patrick Swayze's brother, in a very uncomfortable Q&A, because what they were doing at that point is they were just throwing the filmmakers up there with microphones and letting them run the Q&A, which works okay, I think, in a small setting. Doesn't work as great when you have 500, 600 people out there because they can't hear each other. And so we would always tell the filmmakers, repeat the question before you answer it, which sounds like an easy thing to do. But then when you're actually trying to answer a question, it's easy to forget to do that. And then you get people who are just uncomfortable to talk to. And so we had a character in the audience that year who wanted to talk to Don about his brother Patrick, who had passed away recently, and was just being far too personal and strange.
Wow. Wow.
And Paul and I turned to each other and said, we should really have somebody up there moderating this. This is not fair to our filmmakers. And the next year, we started doing that. Actually, Paul and I were doing that. Paul, during the festival, is also very busy managing the drivers and the transportation, which you don't realize how difficult it is until you watch him do it.
Yeah.
And then you start to
Imagine.
realize that's just like a full-time job right there. So he
Sure.
eventually just, I started doing more of the Q&As. He eventually said, just take them over. I think my parting gift to Paul was we had Nathan Lane in a film a couple of years later. I got a sense of what his mood was like earlier that evening. And I said, Paul, hey, do you want to do this Q&A? And Paul's like, sure, I'll do it. And Nathan did exactly what I thought he would do. And I was so glad I was not on stage. And Paul was the right person to handle it. He handled it well. I didn't want to have to deal with some of the nonsense.
Sure.
But so since, what did I say? 2012, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my very long answer to
There
a
you
short
go.
question.
Nice. Paul?
Okay, so my first festival was 2000. So
Wowie.
I've been here. This is my 26th festival.
Wow.
Yes.
So almost since the beginning.
Yes, almost since the beginning. And I had a walk-on in a film that played the festival a few years prior. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
So is that how you kind of became aware of it?
I saw it in Huntington. I didn't see it here. Don't tell Alan. But yeah, no.
We'll
But
beep it. We'll beep it.
I had found. I knew it played here, but I lived closer to Huntington at the
Huntington,
time.
sure. Hey.
Yeah, it was just
we
I played
understand.
a mailman in a scene in a movie that a friend had made. So, but you know, I've been here since 2000, so I've seen pretty much everything that the film festival has gone through, from doing Q&As in the lobby to starting to do them on stage and then splitting them up between short and feature, because we used to run the short and the feature and then do a Q&A for both. And we noticed that the filmmaker for the short, you kind of forget after an hour and a half, 2 hours of a movie to ask the short filmmaker. So we started to split that up at some point. I can't tell you the year. They all kind of blend together. So yeah, this is my 26th. It's been a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Not my family's favorite time of the year, but it's my time favorite.
Sure.
Do both of you have festival background before working with this one?
No, not at all.
Nope.
Wow.
I will tell you, though, that because of Paul's one walk-in on that film, he has an IMDB page.
I do.
And Alan Inkles, who actually went to Hollywood and acted in a few movies, does not. So we remind him of that on occasion.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I don't know who made it or why, but it's there. So
Sure. Well, I'll be looking that up.
Yes, me too.
We'll be sure to link to Paul Newland's IMDb page in the show notes.
The film is on YouTube, so it's called Playing with Mr. Greely. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
We'll have to check it out.
All right.
I'm at the no, I don't know.
Yeah. So you guys didn't have experience working with film festivals before Stony Brook, and you've been doing this for a while. We were curious, in your personal life, how did you get into watching films beyond just like, I'm going to go to the theater on a Friday night with friends, or, catch a movie? Like, how did films kind of become more? Was it through the festival, or was it prior to the festival?
So I have an interesting story, because way back, this must have been around 1975. I was a little kid. I was bored out of my mind trying to find something to watch on TV. And so I turn to PBS, and it looks like I'm in the middle of a very fascinating movie. And I don't know what's happening, but I can't stop watching it. And then suddenly the movie stops, and there's these two guys talking about the movie and talking about the scene. And I looked it up a year later, and it was the first time Siskel and Ebert, it was their first year of their show together.
Wow.
And they were reviewing The Godfather 2. That just always stuck with me, is like, I didn't know people talked about movies that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it kind of fascinating. So as I got older, I found I would occasionally try to find something different to watch on TV other than what was just at the local Cineplex. I got into Alfred Hitchcock films. I got into watching other older films, and then just finding films from other countries, usually on Channel 13. That's usually where I could find them. And that just kind of built until I went to college. And college I attended as an undergraduate. had something called the Other Film Club, and they would show films from other countries, kind of more underground films. So that's where I first saw The Man Who Fell to Earth,
Oh, sure.
and what's it called? Fitzcarraldo, I think it's called.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I
Herzog.
started seeing films like that. I would try to take a date to watch those films to impress her, but I wound up just like enjoying the film more than the date. So that's kind of how my mind was already working by the time I was in my 20s, and it just never stopped. I was just always looking for different things. I discovered that public libraries had a vast resource of
Yeah.
films, and I mean, you could always go to what was it called?
Blockbuster.
You could always go there, but then I discovered I could go to the library and get most of this stuff for free.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
I wound up doing that, and when I got this job, I was kind of like, oh wow, I didn't know I would ever get paid to give my opinion on anything. This is amazing.
Wow.
Thinking back to when I was young, it was the 4:30 movie. So on ABC, I think it was ABC, every day there was a 4:30 movie. And I remember watching that all like during the winter and stuff. They would have weeks like Planet of the Apes week, Gone with the Wind would take all week to play. So it was there that really started it. And then I think like I was one of the first houses in our neighborhood to get HBO. So there was that, being able to see the movies there. I always loved movies. I mean, I would videotape, get a 6-hour tape and have like a Woody Allen movie, a Monty Python movie, and then like a cheap midnight movie on the tape and watch them again and again. When I was 16, I went to see Top Gun at the Comac Multiplex, and I sat in the front row and I watched it, and then I put in an application at the multiplex that night, and I got the job the week later, and I've been working in movies and theater ever since. So
Wow.
and also working at a video store for a while. So I would have tons of movies to bring home, and discovering older films was a real highlight of my 20s and my youth. So
I thought you were going to say you put in an application with the Navy because that's what happened with Top Gun.
I know, yeah,
Yeah.
it did, but I was like, no way.
You went the other way.
I went the other way.
People were so inspired to join the Navy, and you were like, I'm going to join the movies.
I'm going to join the movies. Yeah.
So we noticed from speaking with filmmakers from last year's film festival specifically of how different this festival is from other festivals, especially in regards of how you treat the filmmakers. And so do you feel comfortable in your approach, or is there pressure to look at how other festivals operate or on a larger scale of how to do things?
So when I first started working here, Alan told me his spiel about the film festival, about how he tried to imitate what other festivals had done, and just realized after a couple of years, this is stupid. Trying to show multiple films at the same time, and nobody knows which film they should go to. He felt bad for the filmmakers, and he saw how they were treated at other places. And he eventually decided, why am I doing this? And also, it was difficult to get an audience by showing multiple films. And so he realized, look, if we just show films in the evening, because it's during the summer, people want to go to the beach during the day or whatever. If we just show them in the evening, just show one film at a time, make it a reasonable starting time, a reasonable ending time, I think it'll work better. And that was really the beginning to the festival becoming very successful. That got word of mouth, especially once the shorts filmmakers had their own Q&A. That exists, to my knowledge, almost nowhere else. So when say a 10-minute short that's opening for a 2-hour movie, everyone knows, honestly, people are there to see the movie, not the short. So you'll get an audience of somewhere between 500 and 700, something like that. And they see the short first, and the shorts filmmaker has a Q&A. Now, of course, we're choosing really good shorts, and we're pairing them with the films to the film's advantage and to their advantage. So they wind up having a great Q&A. And so many of these shorts filmmakers have told me more people saw my film in this screening than all the other screenings combined. Because they're used to having like 50 people in an audience, 20 people in an audience. And they're used to being one of 7 short films and sharing the Q&A that way. So for them, this is just incredible. So the shorts filmmakers really, I think, started the word of mouth of encouraging other filmmakers to submit their films here for that reason. Probably some of the feature ones did, but then a lot of those shorts filmmakers become feature filmmakers, right? And they're friends with feature filmmakers. And so that word of mouth spread in that direction. And now we're in this place. This year we had so many good films that we had to make some really tough decisions and say no to films we really like, say no to films of some of our alumni who we really like. We've played several of their films before, and we just had too many good films. And it's a good problem to have. It's a little frustrating.
One of my favorite things about this festival, and I've been going for years with my family, and then have gotten to go with my friends, is your shorts programming. And I will go through the program when I get it, and I actually will specifically seek out shorts. I might be one of the odd ones that does that, but I'm always interested in what's going on there.
I think there's several other odd ones that are doing that with you.
That's true.
Yes, there are. And can I just add on to what Ken said is that I'm glad he's the one that has to send the rejection notices to people that we know.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's an easy task to do.
Oh, it's so much fun.
What is your process for choosing films for the festival?
So we start getting the films on the Film Freeway. Those are our online submission program we use. Those start December 1, and we close at May 1. So we have a long, I think that's a 5-month period of films being submitted. The price is eventually going up as that happens. And I recently, in the past couple of years, have kind of made it my mission to be the one to try to go through all the narrative shorts and all the narrative features so that you have at least one initially. So you have at least one person who's seen everything and is kind of judging judging them against each other, seeing how they fit together before the rest of the group gets involved. Because then you can narrow it down a little bit. And then Paul's been involved in the past couple of years, and I've given him the very unpleasant task of tackling the documentaries. I'll let him tell.
Wow.
And we get some amazing documentaries. I don't want to send the wrong message, but we get others as well. Documentaries are very hard to make, I think.
Yeah.
And we see some people who are really trying, but I think a lot of these people are. A narrative film, you have so many other people involved that you generally have someone involved who says, hey, don't do it this way, do it that way. Documentaries are so much do it yourself or perceived as do it yourself that you get a lot of people who aren't getting a lot of input from people who've been doing this for years. And so you see them make a lot of the same mistakes, and it's a little hard to get through.
It's a very specific like pet project almost that we see a lot of those.
Absolutely.
How many documentaries would you say you've been getting like the last few years?
I think we get at least 300-400 between the shorts and the features. I know the narrative shorts and features, we get well over 900 of those.
Wow.
And then we get a decent pool of animated films too. This was our best year for animation. We actually had 3 films short films we were looking at that were all really good. And then they're all in competition with each other.
Yeah.
We have for shorts, we have 18 slots. And for features, we have 18 slots. Now, features is a little different also in that we have distributors that are contacting us and sending us their features, usually international distributors. And so Alan Inkles, the director, is the first contact for that. So he's going through those films. And then we're all eventually sharing them with each other, with the committee, and making the tough decisions.
I watched a lot of those distributor films this year also, even before Kent did.
Right.
Just to see what can move on to the next round.
Sure. So, Paul, you're wading through like 300 documentaries. Are you pursuing documentaries in your leisure time, or do you have enough of that?
I think I have enough of that, unless it's. But there are some, and there's one came in at the last minute and ended up in the festival. So it
Wow.
was like 2 days before, right, Ken?
Yeah.
Like 2 days
Yeah.
before the end of the deadline, and it was like, wow, this one's worth everyone to watch. There were a few like that, but this one actually made it in, and I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to Paul's credit on that one, because you get to a certain point where you have more than enough movies and you start putting them together and you realize, okay, anything else that comes in has to be better than this.
Mm-hmm.
And we had looked at a few documentaries that were good, but just weren't quite making the cut. And so Paul started bugging us about watching this other documentary when we were like almost done. We're like, yeah, we'll watch it. And I kept putting it off. And finally, Alan started watching it. He got 20 minutes in and came to me and said, you need to watch this documentary.
Wow.
And he was absolutely right. It immediately knocked another film out.
Wow.
And there's this whole aspect to the programming where, we can have 5 really good Holocaust films, but we're not going to show 5 Holocaust films.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Or 5 really good stupid comedies, but we're not going to show 5 of them. So that's where the programming aspect comes in, and you have to not only try to find the best, but find the ones that go together somehow, that somehow make a program that feels right.
Is there a general outline, like we're going to aim for X amount of this genre, X amount of this genre?
It's kind of by feel. Every year it's a little different. Last year we really strived to make it a lighter festival because the festivals have been getting darker and heavier. So that was the first time we really strived to do that. This year's probably not quite as light as last year, but we do keep these things in mind.
Yeah.
What do you think, Paul?
No, I don't think so. I think it depends on the movies that are coming in. I want to look for a movie that, if we're going to do a historic movie or a period piece, something that no one's ever heard about before, but is still very interesting. Like everyone knows about one specific thing about, say, World War II, for instance, but you didn't know what was happening in this other country, the smaller country, during that period. So I tend to look for those movies if we're doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have specific slots because it really depends on the quality of the films.
It's very tough doing any type of curation, because if you love films, you're thinking of the films that are being left out. Fortunately for you guys, no one will know necessarily the ones that are being left out, right? I do not envy either of your jobs. I watch hundreds of films a year, but to then take them and say, okay, now put 18 of them in front of, an audience that's going to engage with them, that would be a little tougher.
And that's why it is more of a group decision. Alan used to do this by himself. To be fair, I think he did, given the choices he had, I think he did a pretty good job. But once he had someone who was really engaged in it as well and could kind of give him the flip side to certain films, that was a great relief to him. Now it's just not him listening to himself in an echo chamber. Now he's hearing other opinions. And so as we grew that and expanded that, it just becomes, you start to see, like this happened often this year, especially, where one of us would say, I'm not crazy about this film. And the others were like, we like it. And so they would rewatch it for the shorts. Sometimes they'd watch it 3 times or something like that. And then after a while they said, you know what, now I see what you're seeing. I didn't see that at first. I didn't catch that at first, but now I do understand that, and it's grown on me. And so that happens a lot where we're really trying to not tell somebody else what to like, what not to like, but we're trying to see that other side and find what we think is going to work best for our audience. Because that is one of the big parts of the curation, is knowing our audience, because they do have a particular taste, and we do purposely select films sometimes we know will push their buttons a little bit, stretch their boundaries a little bit. But then we also push films that we know are right where they like them to, as kind of a reward.
The listeners of our show are film lovers, and they're very passionate about the film going experience. Do you guys have any advice for someone who's just listening as a film lover, advice for maybe ways that they can get involved with a local film festival?
Advice to get in with a local film festival? Well, I think being engaged in that festival, because if you're going to every film and you're asking questions, because we see a lot of the same people asking questions, very good questions a lot of the times. So I think, I don't know, getting out of your comfort zone and going in and approaching the filmmakers afterwards, to get more involved. I don't know if at other festivals that people have as much access
Sure.
to the filmmakers as they do here. I know they like to talk to people after the films.
Yeah, that was something we found with the people that we interviewed from last year's festival. They were like, we just want to talk about this movie. Like, we made this movie, a year ago, and now you're trying to get people to see it and then give you a response. We can have an idea of filmmakers that, they're distant from us or whatever. And obviously we should respect people's boundaries, but I think they would like feedback on something that took, 3 to 5 years of their life.
They really do. They love the feedback. Yeah, some people, like Paul said, some people are shy about approaching them, and they think, "Oh, you've probably heard someone say this before." They don't care. They it's like you said. They spent so many years making this. If you're the 20th person who said this reminded them of that film, they're like, "That's awesome," because I love that film. That film was very inspiring to me. So they like it when people make those connections. They're not mad about that. And as someone who is up there calling on people for questions during the Q&A, I will say Paul was absolutely right. You want to get involved, show up and ask questions, because sometimes it's hard to get people started, and I look for those people I look for the repeat raised hands of the people who I know ask good questions, and while other people are hesitating to raise their hand, because at least I know that can get the process started.
So your guys' festival is about to hit 30 years. First of all, congratulations.
Yes, congrats.
What are some things that you're looking forward to in the future? And the B question, what are some things that you miss from the past?
Paul, do you have an answer?
For the future, I just want to see us keep going for the future, because it's progressed so far from when I was started to now, that I just want us to keep going. And I think that's the most important part. Keep the quality of the films, going up. So that, and as far as the past, there's not much that I miss. Well, I was a younger person at the time, so maybe I like to go out a little bit more when I was younger. But no, I don't say there's much that I miss that has changed.
Sure.
Everything's changed for the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I first started working here, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had more like roundtable discussions? And I tried to get that going a little bit. Or I would look at the other festivals that were Oscar qualifying, that if you played at that festival, you qualified to, your film qualified to be considered for the Oscars in the shorts category or the student filmmaker category, whatever. So I used to be a little envious of that. And then I realized just how much freedom we have by not being one of those bigger festivals. We really have the freedom to choose the films we think are good. We don't have to choose a film just because a particular person bankrolled it. And we've had those experiences where we've had films submitted to us that had some pretty big names in it, some pretty big names attached to it. We thought, oh, this will be great. I like this actor. I like this actress. And then the film is not good. And they get mad when we say no.
Right.
It's like, no, we're not going to show it. Alan will have people reach out to him and say, hey, we want you to show this film. And he'll say, okay, we need to see it first. And they get mad at him for saying that we even need to preview it. We should just take their word on it. And it's like, no, we're not that festival.
Right.
So I've realized we're the right size. I don't really want us to get necessarily any bigger and have to deal with losing our autonomy.
Sure.
Because that's one of the things that I think makes us special. We can choose the films that we think are good. We choose the films that we know will play well to our audience. I hate to bring a filmmaker out to have their film viewed by an audience who I know will not enjoy it.
Right.
That just doesn't sound like a very nice thing to do.
Right.
So while we're not looking for necessarily safe films, we are looking for films that will give the filmmaker good experience, our audience good experience, and we know we'll stretch them from time to time. But yeah, that autonomy is something I want to keep. So I think staying more or less where we are is good. This year, like I said earlier, we've had some of the best films ever, but that comes with some difficulty because other festivals are trying to get those films now, and we probably play a little nicer in the sandbox than some other festivals. We don't demand a premiere status like some other festivals do. So we've had some filmmakers who say, sorry, we can't play there because of this, but we wish we could. We've had other filmmakers who said, you know what? Just because you guys told me I didn't have to have it, I'm going with you. And I'm not going to go to that other festival because I don't like that they're demanding that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we wound up getting premieres just because we didn't demand the premiere. So I like where we're at. And like Paul, I'm not sure I miss anything from the past necessarily.
I mean, we used to carry stacks of VHS tapes home to watch, you know, for previewing the films. We have a whole library of our old VHS and DVDs of film festivals past.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's where my mind went when you said that you've been doing this for 26 years. I was like, I imagine that technology has made it easier to wade through hundreds of films.
Sure, yeah. Everything being digital now is amazing because it was actually a physical copy when I first started that we had to have.
Wow.
Me too for the first few years. Fortunately, it changed shortly after that.
Yeah.
They were DVDs then.
Yeah,
right?
they were DVDs. Yeah. They were a little smaller. Yeah.
The funny thing is we have all these VHS tapes, but I don't think we have a VHS player around anywhere in the building.
You got to invest in one before they go up even more in price.
Yes.
Well, hey, thank you guys very much. We really appreciate your time, and now knowing how many movies you have to go through, I feel bad for taking any of it.
I know, right? Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Up next, this is our interview with Alan Inkles. I know we're talking about, 30 years of the film festival, very, very long time. You mentioned, 12 years on top of that you've been there. How did you come up with the idea for the Stony Brook Film Festival?
Yeah, it's a little by accident. I was producing an international theater festival. My background was an actor. I was an actor for about 30 seconds. I went out to school. Yeah, maybe a minute if I'll be kind. I went out to LA to be a movie star. Went to UCLA, play soccer and be a movie star. Neither one worked out all that well. I came back home, and I was performing actually at Theater 3 in Port Jefferson. I was playing Romeo and Juliet, and of course I hurt my knee, not jumping off a balcony, but walking into a piano during Act 4 because Shakespeare gave Romeo the act off so I could mess around backstage and get into trouble. And of course, I was the only one who could play that role, not the understudy. So I had to finish that last week with a torn ligament in my knee, and I did a nice job to it. And I had graduated Stony Brook a year before, and since I couldn't act, there were people that thought that was the case even when I could. I went to my director of the center and said, listen, I knew you when I was a student. You need someone to work? He said, we need a theater manager. I took the job, and the rest, as they say, right, is history. But I was really managing the theater for about 2 years, and they weren't doing any programming in the summer. Actually, the theater had just opened up. The Stoller Center was fairly new to the campus, and they were doing a few shows during the year, mainly university programs. And in the summer, the director, Terrence Netter, at the time said, listen, we have some money. Would you like to do something in the summer? I said, well, I'd love to do theater. It's my background. I don't know how I managed it, but somehow I got involved as a 25-year-old kid with a guy in Baltimore who was doing theater. And he said, we're bringing international theater in because it's hard to get American theater by Actors Equity and all of that. And I still don't know how I was able to reach, British Airways, who gave me free travel anywhere I wanted to go. Wow. The Abbey Theatre in Ireland gave me a company for free. The Cheek by Jowl Theatre in London it was back in the era when people wanted to bring their companies to America. And I was bringing companies here for about 8-9 years, and I produced a wonderful international theater festival. The problem was, after 8-9 years of it, Actors Equity was getting annoyed because I was bringing in work from other countries. The Russian clowns, Theater Litzaday was taking work away from American actors in New York. Go figure. whatever.
Wow.
But that
Wow.
was, and then immigration began to be a problem. I was having problem getting visas. So
Mm.
this wonderful thing I did for 8, 9 years of bringing theater from, we had this Russian clowns troupe that became part of Cirque du Soleil. Oddly enough, Cirque du Soleil I saw in Montreal 40 years ago and came back here and said to my president, this is a very cool thing. It's a circus. There's no animals. It's one ring. We need $1 million, back,
Mhm.
40 years ago. We got to get a tent in the theater. And he said, listen, are you nuts? I said, I think I am. So we let Battery Park have the New York premiere of the show.
Sure.
So it was a great run. But the problem was it became very expensive. And I said, Actors Equity was giving me issues and visas were becoming impossible to get. And I stopped it. And we just said, all right, the summer we'll do what we do during the year. We'll bring in programs like Kelly O'Hara and Dance Theater of Harlem. It just wasn't interesting to me because at that point I started bringing in shows all year round. And I said, this is just doing the same thing in the summer. And people are traveling. And I literally walked in the theater one day, this big 1,000-seat theater, looked at the proscenium and said, you know what? I remember when I was younger, we used to go to the movies and see movies on a real screen because this is, 1980 something, right? 86, 87. And I'm thinking, it was all multiplexes. That's all we were seeing. You guys grew up to multiplexes.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
remember real theaters that you'd go to, and these, there's still a couple, I think maybe one left in the city. There's nothing left on the island. I said, what about doing movies? And, it just was a strange idea. I went to the Stoller family, who've been very supportive of us. And they said, what do you need? I said, well, we need a big screen. We need projectors, I think. I think you got to show them on something.
Right.
I knew nothing about showing. I love going to the movies, but I knew nothing about showing them. And I got a real kind of quick education of what it took. And we raised some money privately. We built a booth in the back of the theater. Had to pull out some chairs because we had a lighting booth where for the live shows, but the throw wasn't the right angle for film. So we had to build a new booth in the back of the theater. We bought two 35 millimeter digital Dolby projectors, which are now in museums somewhere, probably, if you can even find them. And we did a Spielberg series. I said, I want to do Spielberg. And I learned really quickly that the 35 millimeter film world was not as easy as I thought. We
Yeah.
couldn't get prints of E.T. and Jaws. So
Yeah.
we did the Spielberg Festival with a couple of his smaller films not being able to be presented. And I learned very quickly that this is going to take a lot more than just trying to show movies. So it was sort of an accident. We really, I said, let's try showing movies. And the crazy guy I am, I can't just show movies. I've got to make it more interesting. And we started showing movies. And that was really the first year we didn't even call it a festival. We just tried showing movies. And then the second year, things started to develop. We started doing a lot of different things. I had a friend who knew actors out east, Cliff Robertson and Eli Wallach. And I said, all right, let's show their old movies. And again, trying to find the right prints were impossible. We showed Pawnbroker for Rod Steiger. I wanted to show, another film, and obviously that's all we could get our hands on, but it was a brilliant film. And he did a Q&A, and I said, this is kind of cool. Then I got involved with this thing called the Long Island Film Festival, which was running some years out in Nassau County. And they got involved. And the problem was I didn't know much about how we would show films. So we were using all our theaters. I did, 35 millimeter in the main theater. I did 16 millimeter in the recital hall, our small theater. I did videos in the black boxes. But this wasn't the kind of thing that we could do because we had a small audience and we're splitting them even smaller.
Right.
And
Right.
after 2 years of doing this, I went to Sundance in 1989, and I loved it. And I said, this is what I want to do. I went to different theaters. I said, I want to bring in filmmakers. I want to bring in actors. I want to do the kind of thing that makes it really an event. We're a live theater. Let's do that. And, it took a bunch of years of doing that. I went back to Sundance in 1990, and I realized, this is the kind of thing we're going to do. And it took many years of developing an audience. But so the long answer to the short question was we sort of fell into it by accident because I didn't know a lot about showing movies. I just knew a lot about going to the movies, and I thought everyone went to the films. It was a great success in the beginning. Didn't have big audiences at the beginning, but it certainly
Right.
was a great beginning to start it off.
Yeah, how long did it take you to find your target audience? Ken and Paul talked about this last week, but I was very curious on that, and how many years it took, and how do you know your audience?
It's a great question because my short answer will be I haven't found it yet. After 30 years, and I keep telling myself that because that keeps you honest, it keeps you working, right? But it took a good several years. I mean, people said to me, "How do you have this film festival? You have 800 people coming." I said, "Yeah, you should have been here in 2001 and 2002. We had, I remember we showed our first film in the real festival that we were creating after Sundance. I had 14 people in a 1,000-seat theater. John Anderson, who was the New York film critic, was Newsday film critic, the filmmaker, I can't remember the filmmaker's name. I'm sure he doesn't remember my name or ever want to remember my name. And I realized this was, it was going to take, we had to find a way to do it. So the first couple of years I brought in some bigger films to go with it. I would bring a film that was just out of first release and play Titanic on one night. The next night would be an independent film. And we started developing an audience. But it took, I would say, probably 10 years. I would say of getting people
Wow.
interested in trying. I mean, this was an audience that never went to a foreign language film. And
Yeah.
then you put on the screen a film that's foreign language, but it's a 40-foot screen. The subtitles are 8 feet tall. You don't feel like you're watching it. If I had, I would say 1,000 people in my 30 years of doing this have come up to me and said, I never went to foreign language films. And we became a festival early on that was really bringing a home to foreign language films because there's no home for that here. There was before COVID, there would be some theaters in New York, but the reality is, we think of, Life is Beautiful or the recent, successes of some foreign films. But if you could name, if the film goer, an average film goer could name 5 foreign language films that have played in this country that have had a big success, you'd have a hard time doing that. And we have had these films, and what's great about it for us is I've made so many contacts over the years in these different countries that love bringing the films to us because we treat the filmmakers well. We'll pay a screening fee. I was one of the first ones out there that would do it. I said, listen, we're doing it, we're playing it, we're charging. So we opened that door. There are a lot of film festivals that are not happy with me, probably,
Right.
but the reality is, I felt they're not going to make any money in this country. It's not going to have a home. And if they're lucky, it'll get to stream. Even that's now more difficult since COVID. We were giving a home to these foreign language films. And I would tell my audience, if this had George Clooney and Julia
Mhm.
Roberts in it and it was in English, it'd be up for an Academy Award.
Right.
And then so it had to be 10 to 12 years before I really felt we could bring in these kind of films on a regular basis. I remember a Monday night, 7 or 8 years ago, it was a film from Iran. It was about a sex change operation. And it was a Monday night at 9:30 at night. And we had 1,000 people in the theater.
Wow.
And I'm thinking this film probably, if it played for 6 months in an art house, wouldn't get that amount. But people trusted us. It took a while, where you could say, we can bring a film that may not be your cup of tea or may not be a film you're used to watching, but it took a while to do that. And I would say it had to be 10, 12 years and probably more like 15. I would say the last 12 to 13 years, a lot has to do with bringing Kent on board, who really was able to allow me to be able to watch films and not have to hurry through a lot of them because, I was the only one doing it for the first 15 years. Now, we weren't getting in as many films back then, but I get 1,000 films in a year from sales agents from all over the world because we've made these contacts. They know we're going to treat their film well. We know they're going to treat their filmmaker well, and they know I'm going to work for them. When the film's done playing here, my next step is, where could this film play afterwards? What sales agent in America might want it? What studio
Right.
might be
Right.
interested in doing it? What streaming service? And I'll work for these folks. That's what we do.
Wowee. Wow. That was a good
Yeah,
runway
I
there.
know.
No, it's great. There's so much
No,
passion behind it.
you have to have it. I had a fortune cookie that actually was above the fax machine. It said nothing in life is accomplished without passion. And I
Mm.
blew it up and put it up there, and it's and I've got very passionate people who work with me. You spoke to a couple of them
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and
Yeah.
it's all about that. If we're not passionate about it, how do we expect our filmmakers and our audience to be?
So I'm curious, you said that you started out acting in the theater and you did some acting. You kind of pivoted from live theater to the film festival, which I actually kind of like because if you were a quote unquote film person, you might not have felt that dire need to include some of the live interactive parts, or I feel like it would just have a different feel than it does now. So that actually is, I feel like a puzzle piece just fell into place of why your film festival is different, you know?
I love that you said it, because when I was traveling, when I was doing the International Theatre Festival, I went to Stockholm to see a play called To Julia. It wasn't Miss Julie, the Strindberg play, but it was To Julia. And it starred B.B. Anderson and Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
And it was directed by Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah.
And I got to have dinner with all of them. This 25-year-old kid is having dinner with these people, and and I sort of know who they are, right?
Right.
And we were talking about B.B. Anderson. I was talking about the play I just seen, and I talked about the fact that I loved watching her character develop. She played this young girl that had to age 50 years during the play, and I love that she found a place. She didn't try and play a young girl, because I remember playing Romeo when I did that. It's like, you can't play a 12-year-old kid and then try and become all of a sudden this grown man who has to, kill himself. And I remember watching her say, like you have to grow, and where he started at, and you have to find that place. And she found just the right sweet spot of where to start the aging. And I remember talking about it, and she was so thrilled that I was having this conversation, because I was producing this International Theatre Festival. It was the same time SUNY Purchase had gotten all the Pepsi money and had a PepsiCo International Theatre Festival the same time. And the director of the company had just been there 2 weeks before to see the show. And he sat down, didn't have dinner with all of them, but sat down with the guy around the Royal Dramaten Company in Stockholm and talked about the price and how much it would cost to get the show over and all those logistics, which I was going to get to. But the fact that I actually was talking the language of the theater person, because I always thought I was a decent actor. I never thought I was a great actor. And that's probably why I pivoted, because I wanted to be the greatest of whatever I could be. I'm still trying to do that. But the conversation I had with BB, I left and I got a phone call from the director of the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm the next day. I think I left at that point to go to Finland to see something. And he just said, I want you to know that we're coming. And it's BB's decision. She wants to bring the show there.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And just because the language, it's what you said, it's all about that. To me, why do film actors that were, I have a great friend in Brian Cox. At some point I'll tell you how I met Brian and a film that he brought here that developed this great relationship that we have. And, Brian talks about all the time, he has not left the theater since he left Succession. He has not stopped acting in London. He had missed it so much. He's done a bunch of films. We all know him from Braveheart and Gladiator, or all of. He's done so many roles. He's been in 250 films as mostly a character actor, but he's a phenomenal stage actor. And I think when you look at some of these really good actors, look, I'm not saying some of these actors that we know by name and face in Hollywood are not good actors, but when you think of their really talented actors whose career has continued, you look back and most of them have had a theater background. The ones who stay. I'm not talking about people like a Stallone or Schwarzenegger, who I think are great in what they do.
Sure.
But they're not what I would consider actors in the sense of when I think of an actor. So I think the idea of being able to bring the whole experience together, I think all of it is, from the minute you buy a ticket to the minute you come back to leave the theater in the parking garage, it's all part of the experience. And it's why we treat our filmmakers well, why we fly them in, why we put them up, why we have parties for them at night, why I work for them when the festival's over, is because I don't have to invite people to come back. Our freeway keeps, doubling each year because people tell other people about the films, and the sales agents come in and they say, "Listen, we know you're going to work for us." It's got to be that. It can't just be let's show. I mean, that's the whole idea. We're thriving right now. I mean, would I love the audience we had back before COVID? Absolutely. Is it smaller? Sure, it is. But it's not like the movie theaters are, where they're, the ghost towns, because you can't see these movies anywhere else.
Right.
You come to a film at the festival at least 10 years ago, you might have a chance to see it streaming one night, 2 a.m. Now, most of them you're not going to see because the film's streaming at 2 o'clock, but the films that were at the theaters 10 years ago before COVID. And now they're bumped out because the Marvel films are playing the art houses. It's a sad part for me that the fact that these movies are not going to be seen after here, most of them. The wonderful part is that at least we're able to bring it to our audience because we can show them. So it's that double-edged sword that really became an issue. It was already going that direction, but COVID just kind of flipped the dial.
Yeah.
I remember 25 years ago giving a speech at a conference saying that if we're not smart and we're not creative in what we do, and this was live entertainment, we're going to get taken over by this new thing that just started called Netflix. It was hyper pathetic. but it's true. I mean, you said to me, if I have to stop the interview and go to the bathroom, we can do that. Well, that's what you can do at home, can't you? You can't ask the projectionist to stop the film in the theater. You got to go. You can sit home. You can watch your White Lotus and your Severance and whatever it is you're watching. Oh, I just know these names because people talk about them. I have no idea. I don't watch them.
Sure.
But I get it. And every movie today, most of the day and date, right? You can watch a film for $20 rather than go to the theater. I don't love that. I want to be in the theater, but there are a lot of people like their glass of wine, like to stop and pause it. And I get it. That's my challenge. It's not other theaters or other movie theaters. My challenge is that lovely couch you bought yourself that you really became very comfortable with after COVID or during COVID.
So we're entering the 30th year of the anniversary of the film festival. And so how are you, like, what is your marketing plan for that? And does it change?
During COVID, I had a good friend, a woman had started a company called IndieFlix. And she had created this company. She came out here. She won a film at our festival many, many years ago. And she met John Anderson, the film critic, who wrote about it in the New York Times, that she was starting this company. And it gave her really a lot of legs. So we become good friends. We hadn't spoken in some years, but I knew that she had a platform that we could possibly stream with. So I reached out to her and said, listen, I want to stream this summer, but I don't know how to do it. And there's companies out there that are charging a lot of money. We have to go through someone like you because you need the privacy. You need to be able to protect that. And she just opened the door and taught me so quickly how to do it. And we did it together. And we had an amazing year in 2020 of doing, because we'd already picked the films. It was March when this all happened. We really we were at least close to choosing the films. So we had a wonderful, wonderful streaming festival. The following year, we were still, it was very strange because when we were picking the festival, the world was still closed. We had already created a festival we were going to do streaming. A window opened up in May, June, where everything was really great. I don't know if you remember, in 21, there was a 2-month period where the numbers were down.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, we can go live now. And we decided to do it. Then July hit and things got creepy again with that. And I just said, we're going to do both. We're going to do a live festival in July because I'm crazy. And we'll do it. And then we're going to do a streaming festival in August and September and show the films over 2 months. And it was amazing. And the audience loved it. Probably financially the best year, streaming and live. So much so that when the world came out of it, everyone said, why can't you stream again? I'm like, because that's not what we do. Right. And people are not going to give me their films to stream when the world's back open. So going from the absolute best year, in our being live and streaming to 22, which was an awful year for us. For me, we had 200 people at a movie. Now, you go to Sundance, you go to the Hamptons, where they have a 200-seat theater, it's like, we're thrilled, we filled it up. When you have 200 people in a 1,000-seat theater and you're used to having 800 people, and, Campbell Scott coming out with his Secret Lives of Dentists and his producer on the stage saying, holy blank, 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 I can't effing believe it, you've got 1,000 people in your theater with his motorcycle helmet on, and saying that's what we do. So we were having houses of 200 to 300, and I seriously questioned. And I remember walking over to Kent and my production team and saying, "We've got to get this back. We've got to find a way to market this." And we came upon in 2023 the idea that we have got to sell this as you can't see these movies anywhere else.
Right.
And if you don't see it now, you're never going to see it. You see the brochure, you see this wonderful film from Israel, or this great drama from independent film, or a documentary about a young Yazidi girl who escaped ISIS and went to go back and find her family, and she shot half the film with this great filmmaker. And you want to see that, you better come to the Stony Brook Film Festival or you're not going to see it. In 2023, it worked. We got a much bigger audience, and I felt that we're in the right direction. And last year was great. Are there numbers like COVID, before COVID? No. We're averaging 500 people in the movie theater. The filmmakers are thrilled. I'm apologizing to them. They're like, what are you, nuts?
Right.
They take that picture, the selfie, and they get the audience. They said, this is more people I've had in the last 12 festivals I played at. But, that's our theater. You got to play to your strengths. What are you looking for? You're looking for films that can fill the theater. I want a film that will challenge my audience. I want a film that's going to, take you to another world. And it might not be a film you used to sing, but I can't give you 20 experimental films because we'll be done. I
Right.
can't give you 3 of them probably in a season. Even if
Right.
I found 3 amazing ones, I've got to look for that. But the marketing, look, it's all digital. My live theater, my live season too. I love radio, I love TV, I love print, but it's all digital. It's all social media. I hired some young people to do social media with us. We do a ton of that. But the marketing really, and I just said to my social media director before I came upstairs, there was a nice article written about us in the University magazine, and we're talking about we're about to announce our early bird price for the films. And I said, keep remembering in the back of your head, you can talk about all these great films we're doing, but the line we got to keep remembering is, you want to see this film? We show it one time in our beautiful theater on our big screen with the filmmaker coming out, and you have a question, you can ask him or her that. A lot of female directors, we were really doing that before Hollywood thought about it. Not because we wanted to, because there were amazing filmmakers out there that happen to be female. And we have always had between a third and half our films female directors, and they're doing amazing work, and I'm thrilled that we can showcase that. It's just been something we've done, writers and directors. So when Hollywood started, doing that 10 years ago, I'm like, yeah, take a look. We've had some great films here from all over the world. But I just keep reminding my marketing team. I remember one night we had a film called Henri Henri. It was a French film that reminded me of Amelie. Remember the film Amelie?
Yeah.
It had that same feel, very little dialogue. A beautiful film from Quebec, from French Canada. One of my favorite films you should of all time. Just a sweet, beautiful film. And I remember it was like a Monday night we showed it. And Tuesday I came back on the stage, and people saying to me, I heard we missed, the best film last night. Yeah, I got good news and bad news. The good news is it actually just came out on Amazon Canada because it premiered in Canada, a month before us. The bad news is there were 4 copies. I bought them all last night. So that's it. You missed it. Sorry. I like to punish my audience too. It's really cruel.
You mentioned, highlighting female directors, and of course, not just because they're females, but because it's great filmmaking, right? And I'm curious, you guys have obviously your audience you're considering. You have a lot of different factors beyond just, hey, these are the best movies, right? Like you said, you couldn't just put 10 experimental films out there. It wouldn't work. I'm curious for you personally, and you can answer this as freely or as tight-lipped as you want.
No, I got nothing to hide, I don't think.
When you are going through, what are some of the criteria that you personally are looking for in what you're going to showcase?
I go back to my acting days, again, those few days. I always used to talk about, in rehearsal, you are putting all the things together, and in classes, this method and how you do this. But the minute you go on stage, it's all gone. And it's just you now being on stage. And if you're thinking about anything other than what the character is thinking about, you can't do it. And at some point in my acting career, that again was very short-lived, I couldn't do that. I didn't have, you could tell by my ADHD or whatever I've got going on here, I didn't have the patience to I could be like, oh, my bills got to get paid. What's going on? I remember being in Diary of Anne Frank, and I've got this imaginary cat for 30 minutes. I'm playing his painter. For 30 minutes, I'm up to no lines. I'm thinking about the bills. I'm thinking about what I got to do tomorrow. Sort of being dramatic, but the truth is, that's it. And I think of when an actor's on stage, oddly enough, when I watch a film now for the film festival, I don't know what I'm looking for. I mean, I know what I'm looking for. You want a good story, you want good acting, you want it to look great. And in this world of digital filmmaking where you can make it on your phone, if it doesn't look good, then why'd you even send it? So it was easier in the earlier days because we had this big screen. If you sent me in a 35 millimeter film or a 60 millimeter film that looked like, your father stepped on it, for 20 minutes and the cat ate it and dragged it across the floor, and that was half the films that would come in, you didn't show it. Today, 90% of the films that come in look really good. So you can't now watch 10 minutes of a film and say goodbye.
Right.
I'm looking for it to hit me just the way I want to be as a theater audience. I watch films, I'll cry during them 4 times watching the same film, the same scene. I want to go into a film when I'm watching it completely unaware of anything. I don't read about the film. Kent's kind of funny. He'll tell me, I said, I don't want to know, but I don't want to watch the trailer. I don't want to see a review. Yeah. Fortunately, there's not many for most of these films anyway. I want to go in like a movie, with a moviegoer, and I turn on the film, and it's some, after watching maybe 25, 30,000 movies, maybe. I was trying to add it up. Someone asked me the question. I don't know, over 30 years. I think something seeped into my body. I know when I'm watching it to continue watching it. There are things in my mind, you start thinking, analytically, okay, it's really good. Is it better than the other film I've seen? The ending's got to be really good to make this work. This character's got to get developed. But for the most part, I'm really trying to watch it kind of gutturally. I'm really trying to watch it as someone who's been in the business for 40 years of being an actor, being a director, running an art center, going to live shows and doing the same thing for live shows. When I go to a ballet, when I'm in the city 4 or 5 times a month, looking at a cabaret show, a theater show, a dance event. And I just don't go in as a critic or as I always look for the best. I mean, people ask me how much of the film do you watch? I will give it every chance possible because I just, if it's really bad, sorry, okay. But I'm not going to turn a film off after 5-10 minutes if it's just because I know what it took to make the film. I know the filmmaker put every one of the heart and soul into doing it. And I try and find the good in it. And at some point, if there's not enough good, you just have to say, okay,
Sure.
I'll move on to the next one. It's got to be really special to play our film festival. I mean, we're probably the hardest film festival to get in. We get 2,000-3,000 films come in. We choose 36, 1% of what comes in. We're harder to get in than Sundance or Toronto or Cannes. I'm not saying we're better than them. Of course we're not. And we're not as big as them or anything like that. We know who we are. But we are very difficult because you can't put pretty good on a theater that's 1,000 seats and a 40-foot screen.
Is there a film or documentary that you are most proud of premiering at the festival?
And you can say 5. It's okay. You
Yeah,
don't have to
yeah.
narrow it to 1.
It's funny. I'm going to tell you, a funny story. Of course I will.
Yeah.
My assistant director of the art center and my development director, 2 amazing women who are just phenomenal, really run this place, asked me about 2 years ago to put together my top 10 films. I got it down to about 110.
Yeah.
my top 10 films. But I'll give you a couple. There was a short film, I'm going to say it was probably about maybe 2005, 2006, called West Bank Story. And it won the Academy Award in 2006. Ari Sandel was the American filmmaker, and it was about 2 falafel stands on the border of the Gaza Strip. You had Israel and Palestine, and it was a musical comedy.
Wow.
And it could have been the most sacrilegious thing ever made, and it was hysterical. One of the best shorts I've ever seen. We premiered it, won our first grand prize winner, and then it went on to win the Academy Award, which was another nice prize that it got to win after winning our grand prize. Yeah. 25 years later, still so freaking appropriate to talk about what's going on in the world and why we should just ridiculously stop what's going on here. Yeah. But the guy just walked that tightrope to make it work. So that's one of my favorite shorts. There's probably a couple of features. It's a film called that was an American film about Israel and Palestine. But there's an Israeli film called For My Father. Probably was around 2008, 2009. It was about a suicide bomber from Israel who goes from Palestine, who goes to Israel to blow up a bomb. And you have no idea why he's doing it. He looks like a nice, clean-cut young guy. Maybe it's probably streaming somewhere. If it's on DVD, it was back in the day. The other film is a film called The Carer. And this is a film, it's got 2 reasons why I love this so much. It's a British-Hungarian film. We showed it in 2015-16, and it starred Brian Cox. And I get a phone call just about the time where we've already locked in the schedule, our brochure's at the printer, and Brian Cox calls me up. This is pre-Succession days, but I know the name because I just happen to know his work. But he obviously was not as famous back in then. He said, "Hi, this is Brian Cox. I'm an actor. I starred in a film. It was shot in Britain. It was made by a Hungarian director, and it's about me being a crotchety old actor. And I'm in a nursing home or in my own castle. And they send this Hungarian caretaker in who is just the most hysterical young actress who plays this role, who just doesn't take anything from him. And he's been going through caretakers for years because he just pisses them off and he curses at them and he gives it right back to them. And it's a beautiful story. But as far as a documentary, I'm gonna give you one of that. We had a documentary last year, I mentioned a little bit earlier, called Medea. And this guy, Hassan Oswald, was the second documentary he's given us. He had a film called Higher Love, I think in 2020, which was about a really amazing documentary about the drug issues we have in this country. And he's gone to a couple of different cities, and he got so close to some of these people that you felt like you were, in their tent or in their, a lot of the homeless people. It was a brilliant film. So when he came back to me last year with this film called Medea and told me there's this young girl who's a Yazidi girl named Medea who he got to know, she had been, was a prisoner in ISIS camp, escaped, I forget what country in the Middle East, to meet her. And he fell in love with her. And she wanted to go back and find her family. So he went with her. And some of the times she went alone because she could get in alone. She shot half the movie on a camera he gave her. And it's this brilliant film about this young woman who was brutally, raped and in her, when she was, younger, and goes back to find her family. She lives in New York with him now. She came out for the screening, got a standing ovation. She still calls me. She wants to go to Stony Brook. We're going to try and get her into school here. She's got to get her GSD done. She's got to get her GSD. So to me, it is a live event. I don't want to just show movies. Then go sit on your couch and watch them.
Right.
We want the whole experience. We want you to be part of it. Sitting with an audience. The movie ends. You sit there between movies and you talk to. What did you think he meant by that? Well, ask him. He's up there.
Right.
He's not going to tell you anyway. But go ahead and ask him.
I'm curious. We are doing this for the 30th year anniversary. You've been doing this for decades now, and you can say that with a real S on the decade.
I know, right?
It's not just two,
I know. It's like when they say, it's my first annual film festival. No, you can't say that.
Right.
You got to
right.
at least have two.
Right.
You don't know if you're going to do another year after this year, okay?
Yeah.
So now that you've been doing this for a while, what are you looking forward to as the film festival continues past 30 years? Is there anything? Is there nothing?
Yeah, I'm looking to retire at some. No, my wife. I hate lawn work. I really do. So my wife does not want me home. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of the fact that people like Kent and Paul, and not just them or the programming team. My team for the Arts Center, they turn their hats around and put 3 or 4 of them on. They become projectionists. They become hospitality. They become drivers. They become hotel concierges. The reason why this festival works is I don't bring in a team. We bring in some students and volunteers and we overhire some people in. But for the most part, my staff is running this festival year round and preparing for it. They're ready. They don't need me anymore. They really don't. I mean, they're hanging around. They still like me a little bit. I try and put my 2 cents in. I'm just really proud that it's really become more than just my film festival, which it was for 10, 15 years. And I'm never that person that feels that way. But I didn't have anyone that I could share it with, in a sense that I knew that if I had 15 years ago would leave this place, it probably would have left with me, only because it was something that I created and developed. Now it works despite me. I'm trying to put my 2 cents in. Kent and Paul have been great. The real future to me is continuing. It goes back to the earlier questions we talked about, Michelle, is the audience. I want to continue to keep people coming to this. We got to stay relevant. We have to continue to market. We have to be able to say thank you, Seth and Michelle, for doing a podcast like this, to get it out to the public. Because there are people, I'll walk next door. You're in Setauket. I'll take 3 houses on your block. One come to the center all the time. One comes, casually. The third person doesn't even know what the Starter Center is. Mm-hmm. And that bothers me. And that's on us. It's not on the people. But the future is really, to me, is based on how we keep audiences coming out to see things like this.
Well, Alan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And as people who have gone to the festival, we appreciate everything that you've done, putting the festival on. And yeah, you guys just dedicating a big part of your lives to showcasing art from around the world. And like we've said many times here, stuff that you can't see anywhere else. So truly, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Michelle and Seth. Thanks for taking the time. And I will see you at the movies.
That's right. That's right.
Never heard that one before, right?
Nope. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you're in the New York region, we really recommend you check out the Stony Brook Film Festival. This year's festival takes place July 17th through the 26th. It's always a great program, and like Alan said, there are movies you are not going to see anywhere else. Thank you to Paul, Kent, and Alan, and a very special shout out to Samantha Klink for helping organize our interviews with these guys.
We don't know how you do it, but we're glad that they have someone to keep them in line.
Thank you for listening. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean-Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.